A few weeks ago, I gave a little talk on both my Facebook and Instagram stories on behaviors that we developed as children that were either for coping or self-protection that now we've carried on unconsciously and brought it with us into adulthood, but are now creating a lot of problems for us. And this little talk got a lot of buzz, and I got a lot of messages from people saying, can you please talk about this some more? Oh my gosh, this really opened my eyes. I want to learn more about this. And so that is what we are here to do today. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, give you some insights and understandings to the things that you might be struggling a lot with now, but then really looking back at how at one point they served a good purpose. And it's not that you are a wrong or bad or dysfunctional person for continuing to engage in these behaviors, continuing to do these things, because at one point they were beneficial for you. All behavior is purposeful. Not always consciously do we do things that we are aware of why we're doing them. We might think, oh, why did I do that? That was so dumb. That was so ridiculous. That was so wrong, right? But understanding that there is a reason for it. And more often than not, you are trying to either get a need met through that behavior, or you are trying to move towards pleasure or away from pain, which are the main motivations of our human brains. So I want to talk about this today. I think it's going to give you some important insights and be a really important step in your healing and growth process. Deal? If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you are back again, always good to have you. Special shout out to my shifters who are here and watching and learning and invested in so many big ways into the healing and growth process. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, button's about right down there. If you could like the video, hit the button, that would be amazing, super helpful, and really appreciated. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my exclusive membership community, the Shift Society, that you can get more information about in the description below. Get on the wait list so that you know when we open up registration. We don't do it very often, so when we do, we want to make sure that you can get in there. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And so many of the counterproductive things that we are doing now that are thwarting our growth, keeping us stuck, keeping us stuck and keeping us in struggle, at one point they were benefiting us, helping us, or protecting us in some way. This is going to be more clear as I talk about it, so I'm going to get right into it. So let's say that now you really struggle with people pleasing. And you have a hard time with that. You feel like you're always trying to do things for others, that you are neglecting yourself, putting your own needs aside. You often feel exhausted, you feel resentful, you feel frustrated, but you don't know how to stop. And you're like, I know that I'm a people pleaser. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good. Why am I doing this? Well, there's probably a really good reason. Likely, as a child, you learned the behavior of people-pleasing as a way to get love and attention when you weren't getting it in other ways. So maybe you found that your parents or your caregivers or someone important to you, that their love was very conditional on you pleasing them, you doing what they wanted, how they wanted, when they wanted, in more of an extreme way, right? Like you really felt like if you weren't always doing exactly what they wanted, if you weren't trying to always be the good girl or the good boy, the good kid, you weren't always trying to, be the shiny one, be the one that was never getting into any trouble, the one that was never creating any problems, the one that was never, expressing themselves or sharing their own wants and needs. As long as you just were easy and lovely and good, you got love and attention. To the point where maybe even your thoughts and feelings were ignored or punished. So then you learned that the way to get love and attention and affection was to people please, that you learned that your value only comes from what you can do for others, how you can be what others want or expect you to be, how to make them happy is the only way to get love. And so you learned that, and probably there was a lot of that going on in your childhood, and now you've brought that with you into adulthood and have this sort of unconscious or core belief that people will leave me if I'm not pleasing them. That who I am as a person, as an individual with my own wants, needs, and preferences will not be acceptable to them, and if I express them, then they will not be pleased. It will make things difficult for them. They'll have to consider somebody else. They'll have to pay attention to me. And then they will not want to stick around and they will leave me. So a lot of people pleasing, if you are engaged in people pleasing, the root of that is anxiety over the fear of abandonment. The next behavior that you probably picked up as a child for a reason or developed as a coping or a self-protection behavior that now is creating a problem for you, and that could be perfectionism. Similarly to people pleasing, but perfectionism is if you were always, getting the highest grades, being the best at sports, having, a super clean room, always just like being super meticulous about everything and being the best. That was the only way that you got recognition or attention, and anything other than that really high standard was punished or criticized. And so you learned that my value comes from being perfect, from being the best, from getting it all right, from being this sort of like elevated child that was better than everyone else, or at least on the outside. That's how I got love and attention from my parents. And I'm not talking about, parents being proud of their kids when they're doing well, not talking about like valuing hard work and putting in a good effort and, not talking about that being wrong, but if you grew up where it was like more on the extreme level, where it had to be that way, you had to act perfectly, in public, you had to always be looking perfect, you had to be getting the good grades, you had to be excelling in everything that you did. And, that was the only way that you got love, and perhaps anything other than that was punished. So then you grew up as an adult and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect to feel good enough. I have to feel perfect, or I have to do everything perfectly to be good enough. Right? It's like I have to have this way high, like live according to this way higher standard just to meet the mark that everybody else seems to be able to meet by being average. So really looking at that, if you struggle with perfectionism, again, perfectionism is another manifestation of anxiety that again comes from the fear of being rejected or abandoned or not good enough. Then really understanding that that is likely where it started. Very high expectations, very little space for less than meeting the mark. Then you are going to grow up with those same beliefs and feeling like your worth and your value is dependent on perfection. And anything less than that is perhaps reason for people to reject you, for people to abandon you, or for you to just in general not feel good enough. The next one is if you tend to be someone who avoids things a lot. Avoidance is another self-protection behavior that you likely picked up in childhood. So if you grew up in a really chaotic home, if you had a parent or both parents who were very emotionally volatile, if there was like a lot of walking on eggshells, you didn't know what response you were going to get at any given time, you could say something one moment and it would be fine. You could say the same thing in the next moment and it would be met with criticism or punishment or some kind of explosion or chaos. Then what you're going to learn to do is not do or say a whole lot, because that is going to be the only thing that keeps the peace. That's going to be the only thing that keeps you from getting in trouble, the only thing that keeps things from getting chaotic or upset. And so avoidance as a child, if you tended to be a child who really just like avoided things, were really quiet, you just kind of stayed on the sidelines, you didn't really feel like you ever were allowed to express yourself, to say anything, to share your thoughts and feelings, because it wasn't safe how it was going to be met, wasn't safe, consistent, or predictable, then you are going to develop the behavior of avoidance. Just avoiding conversations, avoiding conflict, avoiding speaking up for yourself, avoiding even just like showing up fully in your own life, because you never knew how it was going to be received. Then as an adult, you're going to grow up and be likely doing similar things. If you tend to be an avoider, you stick on the sidelines, you stay away, you are afraid to try things, to experiment, to step up, to step out, and you want to, but you're afraid. I mean, there's a difference between being someone who's a little bit quieter, more introverted, you have no desire to kind of be out there and like, the center of attention or doing things that are going to get you any attention. It's not out of fear, it's out of preference, but I'm talking about if you tend to be someone who holds yourself back a lot out of fear, then likely it's because there was this inconsistent or even consistent punishment, criticism, or chaos that came up when you did show up, when you did express yourself. So then you're going to grow up and tend to avoid things, right? Tend to avoid conflict if anytime there was any kind of tension or difference of opinion or a deviation from the family expectation, it turned into this big explosive thing, or everyone in your family just avoided everything all the time. No one ever talked about anything. Everything was swept under the rug. Then it's also going to be a learned behavior for you that it's like, you kind of develop the message that conflict or differences or any kind of deviation from this person or that opinion is bad or wrong or unsafe or a sign of something negative. That's sort of the message that you get when you see that happening around you with your parents. Then you learn kind of the same thing growing up, and then it can become a problem as an adult when you avoid most things that could potentially make you uncomfortable, because you have the belief that it's not just going to cause a little bit of discomfort, it's going to cause a lot of chaos or upset. Another behavior that you may have developed as a child for protection, self-preservation, or coping that is now creating problems is isolating. So maybe when you did say something or speak up or share an opinion or a need or a want, you were ignored, that no one cared, that no one had time for you. Maybe there was a parent or that had a mental health issue that required all of the attention. Everyone sort of rallied around that person and centered that person, or that you had a sibling who was more chaotic and who everyone kind of centered around and everyone kind of just paid all the attention to, and your needs and your wants and your desires and your voice didn't really matter, then you're going to learn really quickly not to say anything and just keep to yourself. If you are not getting any attention, any love, any connection from that kind of nuclear family, from your home, from the people that are supposed to be the safe, nurturing, loving ones, if you're not getting that, then you're going to learn very quickly just to kind of keep to yourself and not waste the energy. Why waste the energy trying to get a need or a want met when there is absolutely no availability for that? There's no attention to that. There's no seemingly priority involved in that for anyone else. then you're going to learn to isolate. So then as an adult, you might find that you have isolation tendencies because you're just like, well, I just keep to myself because nobody really cares. I don't really matter. What I want, think, feel, or need is not significant to anyone else. So why would I bother showing up, sharing, connecting, or creating, cultivating relationships? So isolating is going to be one of your tendencies. The next one, behavior as a child that now is creating a problem. So for a purpose as a child, probably not a bad purpose, probably a self-protection or coping purpose as a child that's now creating problems, is letting people walk all over you. So again, similarly to this, if you were punished or criticized or bullied for having your own needs, having your own preference, for speaking up, right? And then you're going to learn not to, right? Just point blank, you're going to learn not to, and then people are going to walk all over you. If you were only valued for what you could give to others, who you could be to others, and who you were was not really significant or important to them, then you're going to learn that my value comes from what I can do for others, which means that people are going to just learn to walk all over you, right? Because they're going to think like, oh, this person's just giving, this person's just easy, or they want to do this, or they're available for this, or this is no big deal for them, right? And it's going to create these problems as an adult because people are just going to be like, oh yeah, she's fine with that, or she won't mind doing that extra, or he's always great to kind of go the extra mile or take on the extra bit, or oh, we'll just get Julia to do it because she's always fine with that kind of stuff without asking or checking or just like even seeing if that's okay with you. That people just assume like, oh yeah, she'll do it, he'll take it on, she'll be fine with that, and then you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't say anything or I can't not do it because then people will be disappointed, they'll be upset, they might reject me, they won't want me, my needs and wants and energy and well-being is not important here, right? It's what they want that's important. And that's a behavior that is often learned in childhood through either directly feeling like you weren't important and you only got love and attention or affection from what you could do for others, from being the yes person, for being the pleaser, right? For all of that stuff, or it was modeled to you, right? You saw your mom do that or your dad do that, be kind of a doormat. They let people walk all over them. And so you learned that same behavior. And now, as an adult, it's creating problems. So really understanding all behavior is purposeful. It's not because there's something wrong with you that you are engaging in these behaviors and living in these ways that are causing problems, that are holding you back, that are keeping you down, that are keeping you stuck, that are making you feel pretty terrible. It's not because there's something wrong with you, it's because something happened to you. If we can change that narrative from, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me, to getting curious and saying, what happened to me? What did I go through? What did I learn? What purpose was this behavior serving at one point that was probably protective or self-preservative or just a way of coping with whatever circumstance, relationship, or situation I was in? What purpose was it serving at that point? So instead of going into blaming and shaming, going into curiosity and understanding. And also then moving into compassion. So changing that narrative, looking at that is going to be the first step in the healing process when we can go into, instead of what's wrong with me, to what happened to me? What did I go through? Creating that compassion and curiosity. And then from there, we can start to work on learning how to be our differentiated, secure selves without apology. Working on establishing our clear and confident and grounded selves. And this is what we do in the deep work we do in the Shift Society. So make sure you get on the wait list for that. That is going to be in the description so that you know right away when we open up registration. And in the meantime, I have a new free download for you. It's called How to Be Yourself Without Apology, and it's going to get you started on doing that healing work to become more solid and secure in who you are right now. Start undoing some of these behaviors that at one point were functional, now are destructive and distracting. Start working through those. How to Be Yourself Without Apology. Get on the wait list for the Shift Society. Let me know if, or which one of these connected with you. You're like, oh my gosh, that's it. And, or let me know if there are other things that you learned in childhood that now you notice, at that point they were self-protective, but now you notice as an adult, they are what is keeping you stuck and struggling. Would love to hear that in the comment section below. Always good to be with you. As always, take good care of yourselves. Take good care of those around you. Like the video if you got something out of it. And until next time, take good care.